So you want to make money in crypto? Well, it's not unlike any other investment. Economics 101 applies: supply and demand. And there has never been an asset in the history of humanity that has the scarcity of Bitcoin. And in 2025, we are seeing demand like never before. So what does that mean? Supply shock like we have never seen for any other asset ever in the history of the world. So in today's CryptoWise video, I'm going to be explaining to you why you do not have enough Bitcoin. I'm Milton, and this is another CryptoWise video. Before I get into this, do me a favor, smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And hello out there to all you new subscribers. And of course, follow me over on X. My handle there is at CryptoWiseGuys. All right, guys. Well, Trumpy is president. What's going on? Why is the market so boring right now? I thought we were going to pump. Well, honestly, I think the market is right where it should be. We've got Bitcoin comfortably sitting over $100,000. A couple of days ago, it hit a new all-time high at 109. But guys, this is just the beginning. In today's video, I am going to be walking us through why it is only a matter of time before we see another huge pump in Bitcoin, and how 2025 could be the year that we have been waiting for, where we see that Bitcoin supply shock and things get really crazy. So let's talk about all the elements that we have coming together, creating a perfect storm for a Bitcoin supply shock. If you're new to crypto, welcome, and no, you're not too late. But one of the very important elements of Bitcoin that makes it so great that you need to understand is the Bitcoin halving cycle. Every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that is mined, so new Bitcoin coming onto the market every day, gets cut in half. We had one of those last April. So now every block of Bitcoin that gets minted only releases 3.125 Bitcoin per block. That's down from the 6.25 before that. So every block's about 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes or so, 3.125 new Bitcoin is released into the world. And since that happened last April, as of November 13th, the price increased 41.2% from 64,000 to over 90,000. And as I said, today we're sitting over 105. Now that's slightly down from the percentages of increase in price over the last two post-halving periods. But if this cycle continues to follow the average pattern from the last two cycles, then from our last bottom to the top of this cycle, we should see an increase of about 15.4 times, which would bring us to $243,000 Bitcoin. But there are reasons to be even more optimistic. All right, so we all know that there are only 21 million Bitcoin ever going to be mined. That's it. That is the maximum amount of Bitcoin out in the world, 21 million. Keep that in mind. But that's best case scenario, because we know a ton of Bitcoin has been lost. In the early days of Bitcoin, people held their Bitcoin on hard drives that got lost. There's locked in wallets that people lost the private keys to. So 21 million is actually probably not the right number. Now, the best estimates of how many Bitcoin have been lost is about 3.7 million Bitcoin. That's approximately 20% of the total supply. So we're actually looking at somewhere between 17 million and 18 million Bitcoin total. Keep that in mind as we start going through these other numbers. First thing we got to talk about, of course, is the Bitcoin ETFs. That was something those of us in crypto have been waiting for a very long time. That happened last year. The success of those ETFs was bigger than the most bullish of us about Bitcoin. The inflows to the Bitcoin ETFs have been outstanding. As we can see in this chart here, way more inflows than outflows, especially if we look from about October of last year till now. The inflows have been exponentially growing. BlackRock, of course, is the biggest of those, but we also have Fidelity, Grayscale, ARK21 shares, Bitwise, Pro shares, then they are gobbling up Bitcoin every day. This was an article from yesterday, 75 million. Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF inflows top 875 million. That was yesterday, one day. So you've got BlackRock now. Their Bitcoin holdings exceed 60 billion. According to value data, Bitcoin ETFs continue to draw significant inflows as bullish sentiment continues to guide the market. Funds drew 802.5 million inflows on January 21, one day. And you had 4 consecutive days of inflows that totaled over $3.26 billion. That's 4 days. The next thing we got to talk about, of course, is MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor's company, which has essentially become a leveraged Bitcoin position and a Bitcoin holder. Now, their buying of Bitcoin is going insane. They've essentially been buying Bitcoin every week for the last few months. On the 21st, earlier this week, their latest purchase was 11,000 Bitcoin. So they now Micros alone is now holding 1,000 Bitcoin. And they are not alone. We got to talk about corporations holding Bitcoin because this is another big trend. As of today, there are about 91 companies that hold Bitcoin. I have a table here of, I think, about 25 of the top ones. You see MicroStrategy on top at 461,000. You've got the mining companies getting into this game, including Marathon Digital Holdings. They've got over 40,000. Riot Platforms, 16,000. Tesla still holds almost 10,000 Bitcoin. Coinbase has 9,000. These top 20 or so companies alone hold 596 Bitcoin. This is just about 20 companies. There are 91 that hold Bitcoin right now, and that list is growing every day. So who are the biggest holders of Bitcoin? Well, we've talked about a few of them. These people aren't selling. They definitely, especially the newer ones, the ETFs, the corporations that have just started buying, they are not selling their Bitcoin anytime soon. Then, of course, we've got Satoshi Nakamoto himself. The original wallet of Satoshi holds 1.1 million Bitcoin that has never been moved, and we assume will never be moved. Now, of course, if those Bitcoin are ever moved or sold, that would certainly end up causing a bit of a crash in the Bitcoin price. But honestly, I don't think they're ever being moved. So that's another billion Bitcoin out of the market forever. Then you've got the Winklevoss twins. They've got 70,000 Bitcoin. Yeah, they might sell a few here or there just to, pay for their lifestyle, but they're never getting out of Bitcoin. Tim Draper and Michael Saylor himself. So this is aside from the MicroStrategy of Bitcoin. Michael Saylor himself personally holds almost 18,000 Bitcoin. And he said that he's never selling and that he's going to die and that he's never giving away his private keys. So after he dies, this Bitcoin will be out of circulation forever. You got CZ, another crypto maxi. He's never getting out of his Bitcoin. And then the public companies that I talked about, this is only going to be growing and growing and growing. And then there are other companies we didn't talk about, like Block One. They've got 140,000 Bitcoin. Tether holds a lot of Bitcoin. Then the ETFs, of course, that I talked about. Then we come to countries. Now, this is where it starts to get really insane. So now that Trump's in power, the United States holds over 207,000 Bitcoin. He's already said he's not selling that. The only question is going to be, is he going to add to that for their Bitcoin reserve fund? And I think the odds are that he will add to it. On Polymarket, we're seeing that people think the odds of a Bitcoin reserve happening is almost 70%. And of course, if the states aren't selling theirs, then other countries aren't going to sell theirs the way that Germany did last year. That was one of the dumbest mistakes a country ever made. But you've got China having about 200,000, we think. United Kingdom at 61,000. El Salvador has up over 6,000 Bitcoin now, and they buy more Bitcoin every day. So that's only the top 6 countries. But that brings us to Trump and where things could get really crazy. If he starts buying more Bitcoin for the reserve, and he's meeting today with the president of El Salvador to talk about Bitcoin. And we got Cynthia Lummis, a senator who has been fighting for the Bitcoin Reserve Fund. And she has been tweeting some of the most bullish tweets I've ever seen. Any Bitcoiner tweet. And she's in the Senate. She has Trump's ear about Bitcoin. And she's saying things like this.
It was for Bitcoin. Wouldn't it be fun if the U.S. is buying Bitcoin and it scares China and Russia so they start buying Bitcoin, and we have an arms race over Bitcoin instead of over weapons?
Exactly. Imagine if that happens, what that's going to do to the Bitcoin supply. 100%, no doubt, if Trump starts buying Bitcoin for a Bitcoin reserve in the U.S., essentially every other country in the world has to do that. And of course, we talked about the corporations buying Bitcoin, but that doesn't even get into all the other funds that hold great amount of wealth. Well, listen to Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, talk about meetings that he's had recently with these funds talking about Bitcoin.
I was with a sovereign wealth fund during this week, and that was the conversation. Should we have a 2% allocation? Should we have a 5% allocation? If everybody adopted that conversation, it would be 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 per Bitcoin.
Guys, did you just hear that? That is the CEO of BlackRock just kind of casually throwing out that you're going to see a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 Bitcoin And that's if these wealth funds put in 2% allocation into Bitcoin. And did you hear what his conversation was? It wasn't, should we put an allocation into Bitcoin? It was, should it be 2% or 5%? Guys, the inflows are coming. Honestly, I never even thought we would be here by now. I thought this would take at least another 20 years to get to where we are in terms of the precipice of the real Bitcoin supply shock. It is coming. It is impossible to have 21 million maximum, then cut out another 4 million so that you're only at 17. Then you've got all the biggest holders who are not going to sell. And you add that all up and it's another few million. So there are really only two ways that these institutions or retail people can get their hands on new Bitcoin. There's the OTC market. That's the over-the-counter market. And these are the sales that we don't see. So essentially, if you're a big institution or wealth fund or whatever, you're not going onto the exchanges for the most part to buy your Bitcoin like you and I would. You would go to an OTC desk, something like Coinbase, and they negotiate separately for those prices because Coinbase can essentially, give people a discount if they want, if they're buying a huge amount. But at the very least, it's not going to affect the actual price of Bitcoin because it's happening for the counter. Well, those inflows, those over-the-counter purchases have been going up significantly. It's the new year. And there's not an infinite amount of Bitcoin on the OTC desks. I am hearing that a lot of the OTC desks are running out of Bitcoin. And in which case, people will have to buy from the exchanges. And look at this chart. This is the total amount of BTC on exchanges. This blue line, okay? And this is only up till mid-December or so. There was only 2.5 million Bitcoin on exchanges approximately. And not everyone is selling that. A lot of people just hold their Bitcoin in exchanges. So guys, the supply shock is coming. You do not own enough Bitcoin. I do not own enough Bitcoin. Everything we hope for as Bitcoiners, as crypto enthusiasts is happening now. Enjoy it, cherish it. On these boring days when the market's not doing anything, remind yourself the supply shock is coming. Don't get shaken out of the market just because it's boring. And as much as I love alts and all other cryptos, and I'm heavily invested in those, make sure you've got some Bitcoin because ultimately that is the asset that we know has scarcity and demand. The supply is super low. The demand is becoming super high. That's economics 101, supply shock incoming. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and follow me over on X. My handle there is @CryptoWise, guys. Exciting times ahead. Until next time, I'm Milton, saying over and out.